Hello, I'm Hayden, your host and licensed mental health therapist, Cancer Moon, and the first to get deep at any party, and this is the Evergreen RX. So, today we're talking about activism, volunteerism, being a contributing member of society in a way that is sustainable. This has been on my mind for a while because I think as soon as I entered my 20s and started really getting into my field and part of counseling is it's really important to be an advocate and to just be socially conscious citizen and individual, not only to better our work, but just because it's an ethical kind of connection to the job, caring about people and about the health and well-being of everyone extends to how our society is run as well. And so it really became important to me to figure out a way to give back, to be an active member for social change and for the things that I believe in. But on that same kind of coin, I quickly became overwhelmed at the prospect because I feel like there's so many issues in the world to care about, to know about, to be up to date on. And I was finding that it was extremely hard to balance everything that's going on in the world and know what my place is in it, what I can give, how best to give, and how to make it work with my schedule and my life in general, to be able to contribute without burning out, without feeling overwhelmed. And this is still very much a work in progress for me. Like, I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, and I did some research for this episode and kind of learned some things myself. But I'm in no way fully developed in this area. I'm still really figuring out how to best contribute in a sustainable way. I really don't have the key at all. So if anybody has any tips or anything you want to add after listening to this episode, please reach out. I want to hear. Let's help each other out. Because it's not easy. It's a demanding area of life. It's a big learning curve, I feel like, if you're kind of entering into activism and into volunteering and being able to give your money or your time or your skill set to a certain cause. So yeah, let's figure it out together. But I do think I have some helpful things to say here today. I'm going to talk about just firstly where this activism anxiety kind of comes from, where this overwhelm is coming from. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how to prioritize what you give your time and attention to, which issues, and some ways to care, some ways to give back that are connected to the love languages. So if you're familiar with the 5 love languages, I'm going to connect those to kind of the categories of giving back, and maybe give you some direction or some ideas. And I'm really hoping that me and you kind of leave this episode feeling more empowered to do what we can and what works for our life right now, to help make the world a better place, as simply as that. So, right off the jump, why does activism and volunteering generate so much anxiety and overwhelm? So, there's a couple of aspects to this. One, I believe that's hard to ignore is kind of the immediate hopelessness or despair we can feel when thinking about the issues that plague our world. Um, when we're talking about climate change, racism, inequality, lack of food and clean water, political injustice and brutality, we are barely scratching the surface of issues, and it's already so much. Like things that are existential threats, like just climate change alone. I know that mentioning that to people sometimes can just set off that anxiety meter right away, because it feels so impending and hopeless and threatening, which it is. It is all of those things. And we also want to be able to do what we can while we can do it to improve the situation. And so, there's that immediate feeling of overwhelm and freeze of like, it feels too big and too daunting to be able to make a dent. Like me as an individual, me as Hayden, like what can I do to make a dent in the climate crisis? Like if I'm thinking that way, it's just why even start? Because I feel like I would have, such little impact. And so it can really just kind of get us into this self-defeating hole really quickly, which is legit. Like it's serious. This is serious stuff to be concerned about and to care really deeply for. But we can start falling into that really black and white, all or nothing thinking. So, what I mean by that is when you're in black and white thinking, it can be the thing of like, I need to be able to solve this or I can't do anything. There's no in between gray area of like, I'll do what I can and I know that there's still more to do. And I know that we might not be able to solve this. I know that maybe I'll never see resolution to this issue in my lifetime, which most of the kind of social concerns and environmental concerns and the issues that we're facing in our world are things that we probably won't at all see them resolved in our lifetime. Like they won't be solved, whatever solved even means. So that's a really integral part of this anxiety that comes up with thinking of taking any action at all. I know one of the fears that I have a lot is, or one of the kind of like all or nothing thinking that I face is that I need to know everything or else I just can't even be involved. If we're thinking about being anti-racist, I feel like I would need to be completely educated on that topic. I need to read these books and listen to, every good resource and, expert in the field and all of these people to be able to have a voice or take steps forward or to have any kind of impact. And so when I think about it that way, I don't even want to get started because I'm like, I already know I'm going to fail on that point. I can't listen and read and know everything. And so I'm already setting myself up for what feels like, perceived failure or, lack of commitment, follow through, lack of success with caring about this particular issue. And I think that's really perpetuated sometimes by the way people talk about issues online. It'll be like the 7 things you need to read right now to understand everything going on in the Ukraine. And it's like, oh, okay, well, shit. Like, I don't know if I have the time. Like, I'm reading so much for my job already that I'm like, I don't know if I have the time and if I'm even going to be able to absorb all of this or understand it, remember it, apply it, teach other people about what I've learned, know how to best direct my energy to something that would actually be productive to help with this issue. But sometimes it's kind of the rhetoric online is like, if you can't do this 110%, you're not doing enough. That is fair. It's fair that any issue, it would feel like we aren't doing enough because it's so important to these people posting about it and to the people being affected. And it is big and it is really vital, but we have to sometimes be realistic about what doing enough can look like for us. Otherwise, we won't do anything at all. Which to me, that's a higher price to pay. Outside of just not knowing enough or not feeling like you can do things to the 100% mark, there's also just the despair and hopelessness that I was talking about with just getting up close with the issues that we care about. or that are negatively impacting people around the world. Getting up close to something like climate change means that you might learn some really devastating facts about what we've already done to our environment, what we have already done to nature and the animals that coexist with us. You can learn some really hard and scary things, which is really gut wrenching and sad. And it can be easier to feel like we're not up close and personal with these issues so that we don't have to deal with all of these difficult feelings. So the avoidance of these uncomfortable emotions and that, all or nothing black and white thinking I'm talking about can lead to procrastination. I mean, think about this on a small example. Like for me, I was driving my car and the engine light came on. And I don't really like dealing with car stuff. It's a pain. I don't know what I'm doing. Like usually it costs a lot of money. So I'm just like, I just keep driving with the engine light. Like I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Turns out it was a big deal. There was some big problems with my engine, some serious stuff that could have caused even bigger problems if they went unaddressed long enough to, break down. So what happened there is I didn't want to deal with the annoyance or, with not knowing exactly what to do for my car. So instead, procrastinating it led to potentially a worsening of the issues that were already existent. So that's kind of what I'm talking about here with, not wanting to face a certain social issue, or us collectively not wanting to face it, means that it just worsens over time. And I don't really say this to be defeating because, trust me, I'm in your boat. I procrastinate so hard. I just straight up avoid on the things that I feel like I'm not equipped enough to deal with, or I don't have the adequate knowledge or abilities to face them. But when we continue to do that, we make it even harder for ourselves to break in and to change our behavior because it's been built up into this big thing. And then the bigger it gets, the harder it gets to deal with, then the less you want to deal with it. It's just this positive feedback loop that's keeping us, from action. Which ultimately, at the end of the day, this is what we want. This is why you clicked on this podcast. You want to take action. You want to do what you can for the causes that you care about. So a concept that I found in my research about this topic, that I will link the article down below and information if you want to learn more, but it's this concept of pessimism of intellect and optimism of will. There's a quote that says, "My mind is pessimistic, but my will is optimistic. Whatever the situation, I imagine the worst that could happen in order to summon up all my reserves and willpower to overcome every obstacle." So it's that idea of holding the tension between holding realism over what's happening and optimism for how it could be different. That becomes really important when we're talking about activism, volunteerism, contributing, because we have to be able to look at the reality of our situation to properly assess and take action. There's a card in tarot called the Justice card. And one of the ways that I've learned kind of the meaning behind this card is it's really about looking at things with a clear eye, looking at them exactly as they are, accepting them exactly as they are, so that then you can take a step forward from that rooted place, from the reality of the situation. You can better direct your energy, your actions, your thought, your passion towards changing a situation when you know and accept what it actually is right in this moment. I know so many of us wish that the problems that we're facing, our generation, future generations, just the world in general right now, weren't true. We wish that 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, things could have been dealt with starting to be dealt with so that we could be in a very different position, less dire position than we are in now. But that's just not the case, not always. We again keep ourselves stuck because you can't take action from fantasy. Kind of bringing in this realism in a paradoxical way allows us to marshal our resources, our energy, to do something now, to hope for the better future that we want, and to begin creating it. So that's the mental side of things. That's the mental, emotional side of what we have going on. And I am so stuck in so many of these thought processes I just laid out here too. Like, probably after recording this episode, after engaging with, anybody listening about it and continuing to think about it and talk to my friends and people in my life, I will probably still find barriers with the same issues, feeling overwhelmed, feeling despair, feeling like there's so many things to care about and not knowing where to start. One of the biggest logistical difficulties I find with becoming as involved as I want to be is where the hell do you look for opportunities to volunteer, organizations to donate to, places to give your time? I'm a therapist and I have a special set of skills, and I would love to be able to use those skills in a volunteering setting. But it's really hard to find. And it's really hard to find things that aren't part-time positions where you have to do training and you have to commit to a certain amount of slots and stuff like that. And right now my schedule just does not allow for that. And so that's a whole thing. And so you guys, if you have places you like to look, let me know and I'll share them with everybody, because I still struggle with that, besides Googling and trying to find local places, which sometimes works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes there can really be some barriers to even just getting in the door, even if you've gotten past the mental blocks and you're like, okay, I'm ready to take action. I'm going to look up things. I'm going to find places to go or ways to contribute. And then you're like, oh my God, I don't even know how to wade through all of the information online. That is really real, but I think the more awareness that we bring around it and the more understanding we have of what's going on and why it feels really hard to know where to direct your energy and to be able to actually get the motivation up to do it, the more empowered we are, I believe. I really do believe that understanding is the first kind of step to empowerment. So now, how do you prioritize what to put your energy, your time, your resources into? Because like I said, the list of things, of causes, of tragedies, of issues to care about is endless. Truly endless. How do you prioritize what you're going to dedicate to? I've become really passionate recently with this idea of kind of picking your top 3 issues. The ones that if you're going to put time and energy into, these are the issues you're going to do. You're going to care about. Because I think when we spread ourselves too thin, like I was saying, this idea of social media that is you need to care about everything and you need to care about it deeply and you need to know about it now. Yesterday. You need to know about yesterday. You need to know how to talk about it. And you need to really understand and contribute. That is not realistic. At least in my mind. Our lives are busy. We're overstimulated. We're overrun. There's a lot of things asking for our attention always. And we have a finite capacity of time and energy to commit. And when I'm feeling oh my God, there's this war here, there's this earthquake here, there's this, there's racism here in the country I live in and everywhere else, and I need to commit to all of these things, I feel like a squirrel. I feel so spread thin, and again, it just makes me want to avoid, because it's just it feels like an impossible mountain to climb. So I've been kind of toying with the idea for myself of really tapping in emotionally to what connects deeply with me. And this is different for everybody. Obviously, one of the things that connects really deeply for me is mental health. Another issue that connects deeply is LGBTQ rights. Those are things that naturally pull my focus, pull on my heartstrings, move me deeply, which some of our best, most empowered action comes from when we're really moved deeply on something. And this is not to say that I do not care about anything I didn't list. It's just to say that tapping in, I've noticed the things that naturally pull my attention. You know, the article, if I see a title about something, I might read because there's something in me that just feels drawn. It's in line with my values. It's in line with, I don't know, who I am as a person, or maybe the issues I was put on this earth to care about. I don't know what it is, but I think that we all have these things. You know, if we think about Greta Thunberg, we all know what issue pulls on her heartstrings. And so I think getting really honest with yourself about this can be empowering and much more effective on where you are putting your energy. Because concentrated energy, I think, can go a lot further than spread out little spurts of energy towards a lot of things. And this doesn't mean turning a blind eye on other issues. I think it's important to stay up to date with what's going on in the world, but in a way that's digestible and bite-sized to you. You know, one of the things I really like is I'm subscribed to this thing called 5 Things on, it's CNN's newsletter. And so they just send out 5 things that are going on in the world on that day, and they send it to your email every morning. And that's a nice short little blurbs. I feel like I can keep up with some of the important current events of the world in a way that's, logical for my schedule. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to connect these to the love languages, because I think that one of the things with how we give back, how we show care, sometimes we get these ideas of what that needs to look like because what it looks like for somebody else or what it looks like to people online. But if it's really not aligned with who we are as a person, again, I don't think it's going to be sustainable. You know, if you're a lot more introverted, or you have an incredibly hectic schedule, and you're, expecting yourself to go to protests every weekend and table or hand out flyers on college campuses or whatever it may be, that might not be the most logical option for you, because that'd be socializing a lot with people, or a large time dedication that you might not have in your schedule. And so if it's not going to be sustainable, if it's not logical, if it doesn't fit into who you are or what your life looks like, I think that's going to lead to more feelings of defeat, because you're trying to do something that might not work for you, and then you're not able to do it, and then you feel worse, and then boom, you want to avoid feeling bad, and so you avoid doing, anything in general. I've lined these up with the love languages because I think it's kind of a fun way, if you do know your love language, to think of activism as an extension of love. It is. It's caring for the world in general, and for the suffering of people around us. And so really seeing what is my natural way of showing love that comes easiest to me as a real first stepping stone into awesome, you know that this is a love language of yours. It comes more easily to you. Let's apply it to this social issue that you care about, and boom, maybe it is a little bit more attainable because it feels aligned for you. Here are some ways to give back. Monetary, donations. This would be the love language gifts. So giving however much you feel you have the financial ability to give. You can even set up recurring donations. Then there's education, having conversations, sharing information with the people in your life. This would be words of affirmation, the love language, words of affirmation. So that would look like, sharing with a friend, uh, maybe a term that they use that they don't know is problematic or detrimental, and just kind of gently educating them or sharing with them what you know. It can look like sharing things on social media, making infographics, or talking about different resources. Volunteering, straight up, that's going to be acts of service. So, really going out and using your time and energy for the well being of others. Quality time, doing acts of kindness or protesting, tabling. I think of acts of kindness as, I don't know if you ever would go to nursing homes when you were younger, but going to nursing homes, interacting with the members there, talking to people. And I did come up with one for physical touch, and I said manual labor. I'm thinking Habitat for Humanity, something that just really involves you. If you go out and you do like a local like trash pickup in your area to clean up your city, that's what I could come up with for physical touch. Also, some ideas for just easy, quick, um, really accessible ways to give back. If you're looking for a way to just dip your toe in, or you feel like right now you have very little to give, but you want to do something, there's a couple of ideas that I had. One is donating blood. If you're able, there's always a need for blood donation. Most places, I think, have um, pretty easy process for donating blood. Voting, that is definitely an active service. I would say voting in the people that support the issues that you really care about cannot be, undermined or underestimated the impact that it has to you exercise your right and be proactive. Using Amazon Smile. I ran across this in an article, and I don't think I really knew about this before either, but apparently if you sign up for Amazon Smile, you can just order things on Amazon per usual, but 0.5% of your purchases will go towards an organization that I believe you can choose, a charity. You can do what you already do on Amazon, but you can have a small portion of the price going towards charity that you care about. Also, shopping local, being conscious of the places that you support with your money. And then lastly, I really think that caring for your mental health is caring for collective health as well. The more that you take care of yourself and you are well, the more energy you have to draw on for others, for the people you interact with. The higher your vibration is, helps raise the vibration of people you come into contact with in the world at large. So if it really feels like right now you're in a period of time in your life that focusing on yourself is what you have the bandwidth for, know that that is also giving back. That is also a rebellion in its own sense to all of the things that keep us down and all of the things that harm and hurt. If you are healing, if you are becoming more conscious, more value driven, and empathic towards others, you are doing the whole world a wonderful service. So that is a beautiful way to contribute, and I think really deserves recognition as being a valuable and generous use of your time. As I wrap up today, I'm hoping you're feeling empowered with some action steps, and also I'm going to remind myself that it's okay to titrate, to go in between action and self-care and rest. Sometimes there's periods of our life where we just don't feel like we have as much in the tank to give, and we're just scraping by doing what we can. And so sometimes taking on more responsibility on top of that just feels inaccessible, or like we'd be pushing too far. And I hear that. That's valid. And so knowing that there are periods of time where we can have bursts of action and then we can kind of settle down and rest. I even read this in the article that there's, it's a known phenomenon of periods of response and action from volunteers, from activists, and then periods where it is slower. So it's just the natural way of things, because at the end of the day, the most important thing to do is to care for yourself, because that's where, everything else sources from. So, for the dose of this episode, I would just say take some time to think on your love language and what, ways to care that coordinates with, and to think about what issues really strike a chord for you that you would like to prioritize with any monetary or time commitments that you have to give. So, yeah, just taking some time to consider those questions, seeing if anything really sticks out to you that you might be excited to do. I know I just got a text from my local blood bank that there's a very high need for my blood type right now. So, I'm thinking it's about time for me to schedule another appointment. And I look forward to hearing from you guys, hearing any ideas that you didn't hear me mention that you think would be helpful to me and to everybody that's listening and curious. And please join me next week for another deep dive into all things mental health, spirituality, holistic health, and deepening your relationship with yourself and the world around you. I love to have you as a part of the conversation. Please follow along if you want to keep up with this podcast, keep up with me, Instagram, TikTok. I'm on there. And yeah, until then, take care of yourself. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.